Okay, so we're about 2 weeks into the format now with the most recent selection pack, which in Master Duel terms is basically already half of a format because there's a new pack and new ban list every month in Master Duel. So yeah, it's been given a bit of time to develop. So let's do a tier list now on the best decks and some of the not so best decks of this format. You know, some decks are tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or rogue, and some decks you should probably not play them in Master Duel and play them in Genesis if you want the best time. But yeah, we'll go over all decks in all of these tiers in this video. So let's begin with the most hyped deck from the recent selection pack. Definitely Monarchs, right? I'm just gonna put it here real quick. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not upsetting too many Monarch fans, if there even are Monarch fans, plural. But unless you're Lithium, I don't recommend you really play Monarch in this current Master Duel format. It's still a bricky mess, even though it got Idols, which is a cool card. It's like a searcher. It searches any like real monster or spell in the deck, which is nice. The problem is that Idols itself is a tribute monster, so in order to even get the search, you have to like do a 2-card combo by getting a tribute father plus this, resolving it first, and then so on and so forth, and then you can keep going. So like even still, this deck doesn't really have 1-card combos, and it has to run a lot of engine, therefore, to make up for the consistency, because you got to draw combinations of 2 cards, which cuts into any possible space you have for like non-engine or hand traps. Also, Droll is being played, which is, Droll basically, there's like not much you can do with this deck. This is like unironically one of the worst decks into Droll, I feel like, which it doesn't even do anything heinous when it doesn't get Drolled, besides I guess domain locking. So like I guess it does set up a floodgate, but at the same time, it's like a 2-3 card combo to set up a floodgate, when most stun decks floodgates are 1-card combos, as in you just draw it and then you have the floodgate up. You don't need to do all this like stuff hoping you can successfully tribute summon a monster. But I mean, yeah, I'm just so moving on. So the probably the actual most hyped decks from the recent selection pack are like Lunalight and Sky Striker. So I have a bit to say about Sky Striker, so I'll go with Lunalight first. I think Lunalight, at first I would have said Lunalight was like really overhyped because of the towers aspect, but seeing now after 2 weeks, Lunalight play rate has like not been very high. It's honestly, Lunalight has been played significantly less between it and Sky Striker, which I think is like probably deserved, because Lunalight, it's a deck that's it sounds, in theory, it sounds crazy because its end board is like 2 towers plus like IP and like additional interruptions and the spell and trap negate. So like if you get to the full end board, it's really hard to deal with 2 towers plus all of that BS surrounding it. But the reality is that when you play Lunalight, most of the time you don't get to your full end board. Like if you just get hand trapped once or a couple times, then especially a couple times, then it's really hard to always end on 2 towers. And if you don't end on 2 towers, I promise I'm not making a Trishla joke right now, but if you only end on 1 tower is significantly easier to deal with than 2 towers, like exponentially easier, because most decks by default will already have an out to your Liger Dancer, a way to just out one Liger Dancer pretty easily, because I mean its attack point value is not high. It doesn't even reach 4k. Many decks will be able to put up a high attack monster to threaten and run over it, and then it's all about just playing around the Regeki, which like the Regeki effect is like the big part, is honestly the best part about the Liger Dancers anyway. It's not the fact that they're towers, it's the fact that they're Regekis. Like if the Liger Dancers weren't towers but they had Regeki effects, like that would be better than the like opposite, where they would just be towers but have no effects. Like that would make the deck worse if these were towers than compared to if they weren't, but still had the Regeki. But yeah, so like among top decks, like there's very easy ways to just force this out. Like for example, if you're playing against a Risio can just threaten a Light Dragon at Ignister, and that automatically just chases out Regeki effects, because anytime they have 2 level 4 monsters, you have to like Regeki their field, otherwise you're just going to make Light Dragon at Ignister and then render like render your Regeki effects basically useless, and then they can just play whatever they want, and then your Liger Dancers don't do anything. Same with Malice. Like Malice has a card called Cyber's Wicked, where it prevents destruction. So like if you anytime they have 2 Cybers monsters on the field, you have to fire Regeki. Otherwise, your Regekis will no longer do anything for the rest of the turn. Like it's really annoying how like these random decks will have just easy outs. Well, not random decks. These highly played meta decks, among some of the best decks among some of the top played decks in the format, all have easy ways to force out Liger Dancer. Also, if they're playing Fiendsmith, if they're really desperate, some Fiendsmith builds can play Santa Claus to search off track. So now you have to possibly consider using your spell and trap, your Silverhound negation on track, because they could at any time they could just search a Santa Claus, and then bam, one of your towers is gone. Or like if you're playing Mitsurugi can play Wosu, and Wosu is just a triple kaiju. Like, yeah, especially if you don't end on 2 towers and you only end up in a 1 tower through the hand trap, it's like the board is actually, the towers is not that hard to out at all. Also, there's like this deck randomly just gets hits by basically every commonly played hand trap. Like Droll, it doesn't appreciate Droll. You can play around it definitely. Like you can still probably end on a tower through Droll, but it's really hard to get the full end board through Droll, obviously. Lancia also affects you because you have a bunch of graveyard effects that require you to banish cards from the graveyard to like get searches or special summons. So like that's annoying as well. Fool Loss obviously is the fusion deck. Dominance Impulse, this is the fusion deck that plays fusion spells, so Dominance Impulse is brutal as well. Like basically all of the high impactful hand traps that people are trying to play right now for the format all hit Lunalight pretty hard. So it's why like I'm not really that impressed with Lunalight. Obviously like it can catch you, like if you somehow don't open a hand trap and they make double Liger Dancer, yeah, that's a bit rough to out. But assuming an average hand, like your chances aren't that bad for going second versus Liger Dancer and Lunalight versus some other decks. And the other, probably like the most popular deck from the selection pack is Sky Striker. So Striker, there's like 2 ways to play this. This is like a going first build or a going second build, which at first I would have thought that the going first Sky Striker is like, what is that? But the fact of the matter is that Master Duel's format is so high powered right now that going second is so hard. Even though Sky Striker is a deck that really benefits from going second. It really appreciates going second. It likes playing board breakers. It likes playing Thrust because Thrust can search Engage, which is obviously much better going second when you can just directly add to your hand because your opponent probably controls a monster. But like, with all that being said, despite all the benefits of Striker going second, and how like the other deck that plays Sky Striker cards, which we'll get to later, basically exclusively plays those for going second. Or exclusively plays Sky Striker cards because they're good going second. Striker has arguably been more popular and more played as a going first deck this format than a going second deck. Has almost nothing to do with the fact that Striker is good going first, because I really don't think Striker is good going first. It's just that going second is so bad that it's not worth it to go second, especially in a deck like Striker that if you're going second, you want to load up on like board breakers and like stuff like that, and maybe not hand traps, which means your opponent is gonna full combo you most of the time that you do go second, and like the boards are either too layered to deal with easily, like Mitsurugi with stuff coming from the graveyard all the time, or like decks will just draw multiple cards. There's like multiple decks in the format that can actually just draw like 2-3 cards during your combo, especially Malice. And if they draw multiple cards, you just risk them drawing into Droll. And the moment you get Drolled while going second with Striker, like the game basically ends. So with all that being said, like Striker playing hand traps and less board breakers and going first has been a more popular way to play Striker. And I really don't think a going first Striker build is going to be among like the top decks, especially not in terms of power level, because the deck does do stuff going first now a bit more than it used to before, which was like Shizuku Pass, which is nothing. But Ace 0 is a pop. You do draw a card or two during your comp or going first, assuming you don't get hand trapped or drolled. And yeah, you might set up a Widow Anchor or two. So like you might set up like you have the Amatsu, which like Phantom of Yubel changes your opponent's monster effects into just popping the Amatsu itself. So like you have like 2.5 for like to 3-ish interruptions you can get during your combo. But I mean that obviously when compared like the 3-ish interruptions that Striker gets during its combo versus literally every other deck that I'm basically about to bring up, and like it's not even close. It's like 3 hand traps. It's like 3 interruptions plus whatever hand traps you were lucky enough to draw into. Like if I'm lose the coin flip and my opponent summons Ray going first versus any other card in the format, then like I am ecstatic. I'm ecstatic that I open no hand traps. My opponent is just going to do the striker stuff, and they're not summoning like a Risio card or a Malice card or Gearsu or a Gemini card or Habakiri. Like Striker Ace Ray is probably the number 1 card I want to see when I'm going second. So like the deck is still capable, but it's fallen. I mean, like it's fallen off of like rated. Like no, I'm not sure anybody in high rated is playing Sky Striker at all. And yeah, the main benefit is that it's like a going first deck that's mid going first, but it's way better going second than most other going first decks. That's the thing. It's just that a lot sometimes going second, no matter how good your deck is, it's often not enough because of the power level of the format, and it's also not among, I would consider, even the top half of decks going first. So I can't see it really being that much higher than tier 3. I'm sorry. I for all my Ray lovers out there. Also, don't. I know maybe you saw Joshua Schmidt's vid. Don't play Runic Sky Striker. Okay, I like that. I really don't recommend playing Runic Sky Striker in a Malice format, especially. But yeah. So now we have a bunch of Risio variants, and the reason I'm putting all these together is because I wanted to just go over all of the Risio variants at once. And like obviously, the newest Risio variant is Risio Onomat. So Onomat Risio deck, I personally think Onomat Risio is the best version of Risio versus all the other variants. So like I'll go over why, but like I mean basically I'm just gonna put it right here. It's not pure. I wouldn't recommend playing pure Risio right now. Pure Risio, it sort to 1 X to 1. Like what even really is pure Risio anymore? So yeah, I recommend to never play pure Risio on Master Duel as long as the ban list holds like this. Now, theoretically, if you do the math, technically, pure Risio isn't unplayable or bad because between 7th Ascension and 7th Tachyon and all that stuff, you technically still have 12 starters in your deck. And you're playing Risio cards. So, technically, there are some decks that I put in tier 3 that might even be worse than the pure Risio deck, just in a vacuum. It's just, outside of a vacuum, why would you ever play pure Risio over any other variant? Because I think this is strictly the worst variant of Risio at this point. It's the least consistent, has the least starters. Like, why would you go through that if you have an option to play something else, right? So, like, yeah, we're just putting the pure Risio here. So, back to Onomat Risio. The Onomat cards are, besides the Risio cards, I think the Onomat cards are the best cards at making rank 4s as well. Like, literally, the deck, they printed a circular for a better archetype with Onomat, because this Onomat doesn't Cybers lock you. So now you can just rank 4 spam, and now there's like certain hands where for fucking Risio can be droll because you can make an early Traptrix Rafflesia, which then you play Gravediggers for the Traptrix Rafflesia. So then before you even search anything, you set up a negate for a hand trap, and then the next time they try to droll you, you can fucking negate the droll with Gravediggers. Like that's not going to happen every game, but the fact that that's a possibility that you can high roll in hands like that when you draw, Onomat cards sounds ridiculous. This also has one of the highest ceilings for Risio decks. There's plenty of other options you can add onto the end board besides just the Risio cards themselves. You can add Flame Banshee to for flag for Protos. There's like an Onomat or like counter trap. That's like a negate as well. There's like all this other stuff. You can hand loop for one location. Also keep in mind Eclipse Twins was also in this pack, and Eclipse Twins just makes Detonator kind of unkillable because anytime you do something to it, the Detonator just pops itself and revives itself again. So, yeah, the Risio Onomat I think is the best one because like the Onomat cards have the best synergy with the Risio cards, and they also introduced like compared to other variants, it has like less bricks than other variants. For example, speaking of bricks, fucking Heraldic Risio, I think Heraldic Risio is just completely obsolete now. This is maybe even the last time I ever mentioned Pure or Heraldic Risio because I don't think there's really a reason to play either of these Risio variants anymore because Onomat Risio is just better than Heraldic Risio like in every single way. Like strictly in, I don't think there's ever a reason to play Heraldic Risio now in Master Duel now that Onomat exists. So yeah, the other best Risio variant is actually so it's Mitsurugi Risio, and I think Mitsurugi Risio I think it's a bit worse than an Onomat Risio, so I'm putting it in tier 2 because number one is like the amount of bricks is really weird because the Mitsurugi engine does play a ton of bricks. And they're level 4 monsters, so technically they're not the worst to draw, but I mean, still. And also, like, the rituals being level 8 make it so that they sometimes conflict with X a little bit, because, you know, obviously if you have to start with the Mitsurugi cards, then your X doesn't get its search later on. So, like, there's just some slight little anti-synergies, which is not a big deal, but, I mean, compared to Onomat, which has, like, basically no anti-synergies, and I didn't even mention like the most heinous thing that Onomat Risio does. I forgot. Like it literally just turn skips your opponent like straight up. If you if you're playing a blind second deck with board breakers and not enough hand traps, that's auto lose. If you don't open the right hand traps, that's auto lose. It doesn't even have to play many more bricks to even do the turn skip. I think all you need to run is like maybe one plugin as like a quote unquote brick, which, you know, there are much worse bricks to run than plugin, you know, as I've noted with all of the Mitsurugi cards. So yeah, it's why I think Onomat is probably the best Risio variant now over even Mitsu Risio. Although you could argue that, you know, that it's not big enough of a difference to separate them into two separate tiers. It's, you know, that could be arguable too. If anything, I'd be more inclined to move Onomat Risio down to tier 2, if anything, making adjustments, because I also don't think like a Risio variant is the best deck of the format. So there's that, and I also don't feel comfortable moving Mitsu Risio up because I don't think Mitsu Risio is like even really tier 1 material. But yeah, also like older variants like Fiends of Risio and Magistus Risio, I think now they're like kind of, they're not bad per se. They're certainly better than Pure and Heraldic, but compared to the top 2 Risio variants, Onomat and Mitsurugi, I think these are a slight bit power creep now. I might keep them in tier 2 or like put them at the like top of tier 3 because like I mean they're still fine decks. Like they're really good decks. They're Risio decks, for God's sakes, combined with a secondary engine. It's just that there's not much reason to play these over the top 2 Risio variants if you're looking for, you know, trying to do your best. And especially the Fiendsmith variant is a little weird because the Fiendsmith variant is honestly more of a Fiendsmith deck than a Risio deck now, because it probably runs as many Fiendsmith cards and starters as it does Risio starters, with the limitations to X and Sword. And, you know, if you don't open X or Ice Risio, then you don't even really you can't do both Fiendsmith and the Risio lines anyway, so it's kind of weird in that sense. Magistus is, I mean, it's just a better version of Pure and Heraldic, but I mean, it has like similar weaknesses. It still plays into draw it, and it's like a lower power level than like these top 2 Risio variants. So I'm putting them like near. I know they're next to each other right now, but I'm gonna put a few more decks in between tier 2. That's probably gonna separate these a little bit. But what's not going to go in there is this next deck, because there was another selection pack at the end of last month, like, right before we got the most recent one, and it had the all of the other, I will say, other archetypes that maybe people don't care about as much. But first we have B.E.S, the B.E.S Metal Slave. B.E.S Metal Slave is probably the first good B.E.S card in the game, because Metal Slave is actually just like it's a detonator. It's like a 5-mat detonator. Just, when you think about it, it's cool. The problem is that in order to run a Metal Slave, instead of running Risio cards, you have to run B.E.S cards like B.E.S Tetron, stuff like that. So yeah, you got to run a lot of basically bricks or low quality cards to get a worse detonator. That doesn't seem really worth it, because like I don't know, like, it is a way to make it worthwhile that you have to play all these bad BES cards in your deck. At the same time, it doesn't change the fact that you're playing all these bad BES cards in your deck. I've tried to look for successful ways people have played this deck. I've seen like maybe 2 successful ways to play this deck, and even then they're questionable, because one is Super Heavy Samurai, which is like, congratulations, you have a playable deck if you resolve Wakaushi. Well, welcome to literally every other deck in the entire game can be playable if you resolve Wakaushi. And the other one I saw was fucking it fucking Mjolnir locked your opponent, because a bunch of the machines you have to run are level 5, so you can make Queen Query to Mjolnir lock your opponent. Which, I mean, you could have done that last month. You can't do that now. So like, remind me what this deck does now. If there's a good way to play this deck, I would be. I can't say I would be interested, but like, it would be good to know if this deck does something besides just run a bunch of bricks for one good card in the deck. But yeah, next we have Tistina, aka Pistina. Tistina got Miasma Dragon. Miasma Dragon is actually like a really sick card. It gives the deck a 1-card combo, which is more than can be said, I think, about a lot of other decks I'm putting in this here, because you can go there's a field spell that dumps Miasma Dragon to the grave, and then when Miasma Dragon gets dumped to the grave with a field spell on the field, it can special summon itself, and then when the Miasma Dragon special summons itself, it gets to search a Tistina monster. And then you can do all that without a normal summon. Like, that's actually, the deck does something now, and I can't cast it up any further. I don't know how Peeps does this. Okay, I don't know how Peeps can still want to play this deck, because you still got to run all the fucking Tistina cards in it. There's only so few ways to actually trigger Miasma Dragon and to get the field spell. There was a way to play this in Genesis. Like, I am obviously gonna put this in the Genesis tier. There is like a legitimate cool way to play this in Genesis with like tier element cards, but also I feel like that also requires you to play requires Pearl or Rhino, because you need the field spell up, which we can't do that in Master Duel. So like, I have not played against any of these decks. I have not seen any of these decks on the ladder, obviously not on rated. I have not seen other people play them or play against them. So like, I generally, like, these are probably underexplored decks, but they're probably underexplored for a reason. Also, Nouvelles, so like, I mean, there's this new Nouvelle card that's like a light fiend. So, Fiendsmith, baby. Just ignore the fact that the light fiend Nouvelle monster is a pendulum monster and doesn't go to the graveyard after you link it off, so like, you can't even shuffle it back with Engraver or Sequence or stuff like that. The most knowledge I have about Nouvelle is the fact that once we get Miracle Raven and Yummy cards, you can bridge into Yummy cards, and then the Nouvelle engine is actually like a tier 1 engine. We do not have either of those right now in Master Duel, and so Nouvelle is like, maybe conservatively, it is maybe like the 4th or 5th best ritual deck in the game right now. We all know what the best one is, and it has all the weaknesses of ritual decks, being that it's a bit weak to Droll. It's also randomly a pendulum deck too, so it has, the fact that everyone's setting imperm in the pendulum zone still is kind of annoying. It's yeah. I look. I'll be charitable and put it above Tistina in theory, just for its capability and the fact that you can splash this with other ritual support. So like there's, you can run more good cards in Yubel than other decks, but. And then we have Dragonmaid. So Dragonmaids, I actually like Dragonmaids. It was my first ever deck in Master Duel, and the support is undoubtedly good. Lady Dragonmaid is a great card. Phantom, like it's basically Dragonmaid Phantom of Yubel that fusion summons every standby phase to get you an extra interruption. Like it's cool. It gives the deck more one card combos that do stuff. Like before the deck's one card combos were make seals and pass, which is that's an FTK, and some would say that's an FTK, so that's fine. But like now, on top of it's not just seals. You can also end on like shall. You can also end with a shall plus Titan. You can actually end on multiple interruptions, plural, off of one card, which is really nice. But the problem with Dragonmaid is still that it doesn't have many one card combos. If you count Sangan Kaiman, the search pitch Dragonmaid, the deck has like 10 one-card starters, which 10 is not sufficient. Okay, 10 is like a quarter of the time you're just gonna not open a starter, which is it's really bad. There's like other stuff you can do for consistency, like I don't know, you could play like Goldsark and Tempest, like a pseudo Tempai, except you're Goldsarking for a Tempest instead of a Blaster to kill your opponent with. Yeah, like when the deck gets to play the game, it's actually all right. But like, there are more than like almost any other deck in this list here in this video. Dragonmaid there are so many games where it just does not get to play the game just because you're bricking on non-starters. And speaking of, like, the deck plays a bunch of dependent cards. I won't call them bricks, even though if you don't draw a starter with them, they may as well be bricks, because they're dependent on drawing an actual starter for them to be usable. Like stuff like Dragonmaid Tiding, the trap card, the bounce. Obviously useless if you don't open a dragon that you can summon. The big dragon names, you need the big dragon names. But also if you draw a big dragon without the small dragon, like what is the big dragon doing for you? Absolutely jack shit. Like what is Changeover doing for you? Nothing. What is Hospitality doing for you if you don't open a Dragonmaid name? Nothing. Like there are so many dependent cards that also, because you have to run all those cards, the deck surprisingly, despite being a one card combo deck and not even having that many starters, it also does not have that much room for hand traps compared to other decks. Like for example, I think that an average Risio deck list runs as much, if not more, hand traps than a Dragonmaid deck list, despite Risio sometimes having twice as many starters as Dragonmaid does. So yeah, begrudgingly, I'll put it in Rogue. I wish the deck could, get to play the game more often. But yeah, that is the biggest problem with Dragonmaid. And next we have Super Quanto, which is probably the best deck from the last month, the end of last month's pack. Compared to all of this stuff, Super Quants is probably the best, because it actually has a real. It's like Dragonmaid, but it has a real number of starters. It has like a half circular type starter, although like it requires you to control a monster, which, to be honest, is not hard in Super Quant. And then it's just circular. Like it has more turn 0 plays, which is honestly, like, turn 0 plays might be one of the most like important things out of everything I mentioned, because the meta is so high powered right now that you really need to disrupt your opponent, and you have to try to stop your opponent from setting up something too crazy turn 1. And most decks only way to do that is through the same hand traps that every deck runs. But Super Quanto has an in archetype hand trap in like this card right here, Super Quantum Black Layer, aka Kashtira Fender with a Blicky. This allows for turn 0 plays, good ones in fact, which you can quick exceeds to make it exceeds that can pop your opponent's monsters or book it face down, which are much better interactions turn 0 than most hand traps. So Yeah, and also super the like this super Xyz, the super Magnus great king of the supercomputer. I don't even actually know what its actual name is, but that is a much better towers than Liger Dancer. Obviously, like you can't make multiple Magnus like you could with Liger Dancer, but if you were just making one, Magnus is a way better towers because it has a floodgate effect that prevents your opponent from adding cards. It's a mistake on legs that also spins a card, so that's that's actually a way better floodgate effect. Like you don't have to worry about your opponent. Like you don't have to worry about your Risio opponent just making Light Dragon Adagnister and then outing your whole board because Risio can't play under Magnus. They can't add shit. So yeah, I actually really like this thing. I kind of like low key want to put it maybe like higher, but like I can't in good conscience do that because this deck still has basically no representation. Not a goddamn soul plays this deck. So you know, I need like a more of a proof of concept first before doing that. But like I could definitely see it being higher. Like even if I test it out myself, if I ever do decide to roll that terrible pack. Also in this terrible pack. Okay, so I actually lied. Maybe Stun was like the best deck from that pack because not just like the Stun as an archetype, but there was the Morganite cards in this pack, which is great. Now you can you ever see those Stun builds now that are like attribute something Majesty's Fiend turn 1 now? Like that shit's that's great. That's all enabled by the fucking new Morganite cards that can let you search Morganite and let you get double normal summons more often. Now I don't think Stun is I think Stun is still shit. Like it's still not good of a deck. But Stun can combo and high roll you now, which is a stupid that Stun has like multi-card combos now that actually set up a quote unquote a strong board. By that I mean they get to summon multiple floodgate monsters, maybe a slightly more consistently. This isn't like pure Mitsurugi that just surges the Fossil lineup, but like yeah. That being said, I think the Morganite cards are also kind of ass because they put you down -1 card for turn 1, and the most important turn for stun decks is surviving turn 1, and drawing 2 cards in the next turn does not do you any good if you fucking just die because you have 1 less card, 1 less stun card available, 1 less floodgate. And obviously the stun stuff, the Morganite stuff is like very funny to try and tribute summon your Vanity's Fiend and the Vanity's monsters, but like don't try to turn stun into a combo deck. Okay, if you want to play bricky stun, play Monarchs. I'm sorry. Like the point of stun is that you're not weak to hand traps, and also like you're just summoning every card you have is a floodgate or a card that protects the floodgate. Don't try to get fancy here. Okay, like don't. One in every like 3 games you might pull off the Morganite's tribute summon Vandy's Ruler, Vandy's Fiend, whatever, but like the other 2 times you're just gonna be bricking on too many fucking Morganite cards that you put in your deck beside that are not actual stun cards. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, we're finally we're done with that pack. I don't. God, that was such a man. What a great pack, right? Look at all these decks from that last pack. So yeah. Anyway, onto the best deck of the format. The best deck. So Malice is I'm putting it up here. So yeah. So Malice got a hit, and Appaloosa's banned. Who gives a shit? Malice is still. It's disgustingly. I think Malice is the best deck of the format still. Ongoing, despite 2 ban lists that have hit it pretty hard, and I think it might even be better than it was before. Because okay, maybe that's saying that's a bit of a stretch. That it's obviously not better. Not having Appaloosa and having like less names does not make it better. And the fact that I don't think people are going to be less inclined to run Lancia. I think Lancia is basically as popular as it has ever been. So like I shouldn't have said that. Malice is certainly not better than it was before. still good enough to be goddamn the best deck. Like if you saw there, like there's just one post which like made an update on like halfway through the month about what the top 10 decks in Rated were. So it's like 7 of the top 10 decks were Malice. Still, it's like, you know, the real problem of this deck was not Appaloosa. The real problem of this deck was the actual Cybers Link monsters, like Link Decoder, are still allowing you to play through infinite hand traps. You know, consistency hits I thought might have mattered a bit more, but the sad reality is that Allure of Darkness is still at 3. So half the time when you get lucky with Allure is like even better than like Gold Sark and even better than Malice and Underground and all that stuff. But like even then, Allure being legal lets you dig for 2. Oftentimes it's enough to unbrick you. Like you run enough darks for it. Even with the limited names, I know like it's funny seeing a Malice deck list and it's just a Highlander deck because like every fucking starter is limited, but somehow it still works. Like you just need any 2 bodies to pretty much do full combo. Any single Malice name almost can like get you there too. The extender quality is still high. Like March Hare, Bestials, and Backup are insanely high quality extenders. If you open those plus any Malice name, again, your opponent needs like 5 hand traps to stop you, or if not Lancia. Speaking of like you know, hand traps, Malice can play Dominus Impulse. Dominus Impulse is one of the best hand traps in the game, so like any deck that can run Dominus Impulse, you know, gets a buff from that. It's like, man, if they don't hit this deck and again in the next Malice might just be the best deck for the next Duelist Cup, despite getting hit on every ban list since the last Duelist Cup. Theoretically, you know, if it gets hit for next month as well, this is yeah, I don't. Well, at least if there's one thing, you know, if Malice dominates the next Duelist Cup, for sure it will be phased out after that, right? Clueless, right? Right, guys. Next, we're talking about Orcus. So like, there's 3 Orcus variants I want to talk about mainly. There's like Orcus Fiendsiv, and Orcus Mitsurugi. So before the ban list, you know, I would have said Orcus Fiendsiv was definitely the best version of Orcus. After I'm not so sure, because the main benefit from playing the Fiendsiv cards was that you had easy access to Appaloosa. So without that, now you have to like settle for Caesar, which, you know, Caesar is good. It's not bad playing Caesar with Fiendsiv cards. It's just that Caesar does not negate Ash Blossom on Heart Porter like Appaloosa does. So also the biggest downside with playing the Fiendsiv cards, because yes, there is a downside for playing the Fiendsiv cards in Orcus, it's that it conflicts with Dominus Impulse. And as I've mentioned, you know, many times before, Dominus Impulse is like one of the best hand traps in the format now. And if you're playing the light Fiendsiv engine with the Dark Orcus cards, it means that you can't really comfortably play Dominus Impulse. Like in theory, you could. There's some people that have been playing a minimal Fiendsiv engine with just 1 engraver as like a brick, just so they can play Dominus Impulse and not. And if they do Dominus Impulse, their opponent going second, they're at least not gonna open Fiendsiv cards. They're just gonna not go through Fiendsmith. If the Dominus Impulse going second, which like I guess that's like a fair way to do it. I mean, that doesn't seem that great, to be honest, but yeah, with the other two Orcus variants, you know, Pure Orcus and Mitsu Orcus, they have no problem with running Dominus Impulse, no confliction. So that is like the biggest trade-off. You either pick if you want to run Fiendsiv cards, or pick if you want to play Dominus Impulse, basically. And speaking of Mitsurugi, so Mitsurugi can play Fiendsiv as well, although those, I think the Orcus list playing, you know, Mitsu and Fiendsivs are like less common than like just playing one of the two. And also like I would rather just play Impulse at that point, because adding the Mitsurugi engine adds a bunch of bricks to a deck that already has a lot of bricks. So like that's also a reason why a lot of people aren't fans of Mitsurugi Orcus. Also, it makes a deck that doesn't play into Droll normal, that doesn't normally play into Droll, which is like also kind of weird. But there's like another thing with the Mitsurugi cards now. Now that Appaloosa is banned, if you play the Mitsurugi cards and you open the Mitsurugi cards, you can make a pseudo Appaloosa in Photon Lord, and Photon Lord can also protect your Heart Porter from Ash Blossom and protect you from hand traps the same way Appaloosa does. But it's a rank 8 instead of being a link 4, so only Mitsurugi has access to the fake Appaloosa like that. I don't think that's really by itself that's like kind of a big enough reason to play it. I mean, obviously you have the benefits of playing the Mitsurugi cards, but you also have the downsides because you're running more bricks and you have less room for non-engine, and the best the Orcus deck, the deck that won rated last season, was straight up just pure Orcus. Like no Fiendsmith, no Mitsurugi cards, none of that extra stuff. Just playing tons of hand traps and tons of non-engine, and obviously Dominance Impulse, to basically have the best chance of going second, because the deck is already very good going first. Even without any secondary engine, the deck is very good going first. You normal summon Girsu, the hell kind of hand trap that your opponent going to have to the hell kind of hand trap is your opponent going to have to beat just one Girsu. Like you're going to need like 2 hand traps to even have a chance to even stop Girsu, and most of the time you aren't, because if you just discard another Orcus name, then like boom, that's full combo right there. Any 2 bodies is Nightmare Mermaid, which is full combo, which is like also a reason why Fiendsmith may not be as necessary, because any 2 bodies is full Fiendsmith combo, but any 2 bodies is just full Orcus combo already, even without the Fiendsmith stuff. So I want to put one of these decks in tier 1. I don't know which one exactly. I kind of low key. Okay, maybe it's between like Risio or Orcus, which one I like more. But so yeah, I will put Mitsurugi Orcus down a tier down here with the other Mitsurugi Risio list, and then whether it's pure or Fiendsmith Orcus, one of these 2 is the better variant. I'm not sure which one exactly it is right now, and that will be the one that's like definitely in tier 1, and then maybe I can consider the other one to be moved down a tier, because like having multiple Orcus variants in tier 1 seems a bit weird, but because like there's a bigger difference between the Orcus variants than there is between some of the Risio variants, let's be honest. But yeah, we'll keep it like this for now. And next, so Gem Knights. I actually low-key, this is like my hot take. I feel like Gem Knights is like low-key the second best deck in the game. Specifically the Fiendsmith Gem Knight. There's a blind second Gem Knight and there's a Fiendsmith Gem Knight. And I've already given you my spiel on blind second decks this format and how bad going second is this format. So I think that the Fiendsmith that can go first and Fiendsmith Gem Knight is actually the best Gem Knight variant, and low-key has like an argument to be like maybe the best deck in the format. But the thing is that Gem Knight is much less common than Malice. Like if you play at any rank, pretty much you will see Malice consistently, whereas Gem Knight Fiendsmith consistently does well, but only in high rated and only in the high elos of Duelist Cup. Like I myself played the last Duelist Cup and I barely saw any Gem Knights, even though it was the 3rd most represented deck, because my DP sucked ass and I was doing terrible. So I didn't get high enough to play all the Gem Knight players. But Gem Knight it's a really good deck, and number 1 reason to play Gem Knight, I think, is that it doesn't have the weakness to any one floodgate hand trap that the other top decks do. So like Malice, like obviously besides Max C, because we know Max C, like every deck has a Max C problem, but Malice has a Lancia problem. Orcus sometimes has a Lancia problem, especially if you're playing pure, then it definitely has more of a Lancia problem. Risio has a Droll problem, and Gem Knight does not care about really Lancia that much at all. Like Lancia prevents you from banishing Hollow Core, which is like okay. It doesn't stop most of your plays. It just stops you're using 1 negate for that turn. And Droll, this deck can play through Droll pretty easily. It's speaking of like Malice, obviously Malice can play through Droll, so like that's a positive because then they can use Droll to, you know, anti-Maxi. Gem-Knight can also do that, and yeah, Gem-Knight puts up a strong enough board. It could put up a very strong board if you want to. Like, if you want to play Kristia, they banned Mjolnir because of, you know, I think Gem-Knight's playing it, but I mean, you know, this deck has multiple ways to lock you down. It already pivoted to playing Kristia instead of Mjolnir even before Mjolnir got banned, because, you know, Kristia is just better in control. So yeah, you can still lock your opponent down with Kristia under Sprite Elf, so they can't even target it. But a lot of decks don't even play Kristia anymore because the end board is strong enough to where you search a bunch of fairies like Herald of the Orange Light and Herald of the Green Light on top of, you know, whatever you have on board. And also, that's another advantage of this deck. This deck has, I think, the best hand trap lineup in the format because it gets to play the Heralds. Because you know, Nepirim is a fairy, Lancia is also a fairy. So because of your high fairy count, you can run Herald of the Orange Light and Herald of the Green Light without, you know, feeling bad about it. Those will consistently be live. And Herald of the Orange Light, obviously, you don't, you know, it's insane as a hand trap. Also insane because it can negate hand traps. It can negate Maxi. It can negate all that stuff. So it's both offensive and defense. Like, it's like Gamma that you can use while you control a monster. It's absolutely insane that Gem-Knight can run that card, and it's like one of like the biggest benefits of the deck. But also it can search Herald of the Green Light too. So yeah, you can search like multiple Heralds as part of your end board instead of Kristia locking, which is also going to be good enough most of the time too. So yeah, I really like Fiendsmith Gem-Knight. It's like low-key. There's even an argument to have this above Malice. Obviously, numbers-wise, Malice is going to have Gem-Knight beats, just because there's going to be so many more Malice players than Gem-Knight players. But yeah, the other Gem-Knight combo deck is Tier Gem-Knight. So I don't like Tier Elements Gem-Knight, mainly because Gem-Knight Fiendsmith is kind of an FTK, so sort of an FTK already. If you do the Gem-Knight combo with Fiendsmith, you're going to win most of the time anyways. So, you know, why do you need to add Tier Elements to the Gem-Knight engine? Because, like, basically, when you play Tier Gem-Knights instead of Gem-Knight, well, Tier Gem-Knight plays Fiendsmith as well. So when you add the Tier cards in the Gem-Knight Fiendsmith, you're basically just cutting non-engine and cutting cards to help you go second in order to Gamba. And, like, instead of ending on, like, either a Kristia lock or ending on multiple search Heralds, you're gambling and ending on to end on a Rokelos. So, like, it doesn't seem better to run Tier with the Gem-Knight cards. If you like, I guess playing Gem-Knight cards makes Tier better, arguably, but playing Tier cards does not make Gem-Knight better. So it's like the worst version of the Gem-Knight combo deck. So that's why I'm gonna put it down here in Tier 3, because yeah, if you want to play Tier, I guess, like, go ahead. This is arguably the best version of Tier, but it's not the best version of Gem-Knight, not by far. Same with Blind Second. So Blind Second decks like Blind Second Gem-Knight and Tenpai. So yeah, I'm gonna put them down here because, again, just blinding second is so hard. And especially with Gem-Knights, when you have an option to play Gem-Knights as a go first deck, and it's being one of the best decks in the format, I don't see the incentive to playing Gem-Knights as a blind second deck. And yeah, also like Tenpai. So Tenpai, there's like two ways to play Tenpai. Obviously, there's the hand trap build and the striker build. I do not think you can play the striker build with Tenpai in this format. It just does not work. It has like the same weaknesses that Blind Second Sky Striker has. Like, I actually think Blind Second Striker Tenpai is slightly better than Blind Second Striker, just because Blind Second Tenpai can actually OTK your opponent, whereas a Striker, sometimes it has troubles OTKing your opponent, and if you don't OTK your opponent, you know, every deck has, you know, they either draw like 3+ cards, or they have tons of follow-up, or both. So, like, if you don't kill them, you also have to then not die on the next turn, which is hard because of all the follow-up decks have. And, you know, Tenpai doesn't have to worry about that, but Tenpai does have to worry about the fact that it can't really win most of the time its opponent sets a full combo. On top of, you know, being weak to Droll, Tenpai is also weak to Dominus Impulse. So if you go second versus Malice, and you let the Malice opponent draw 3 to 4 cards in their combo, I mean, you're just not gonna win, because they're gonna draw Ash, they're gonna draw Droll, they're gonna draw Impulse, they're gonna draw something impactful against you in their hand where you can't interact with them, and then you're just gonna be stifled. So like, if you're playing Tenpai, you gotta play hand traps with Tenpai. You also, unlike Striker, you don't have the option of playing Tenpai going first. Okay, it's just not possible. Like, you're gonna get on Seal's Pass plus a bunch of hand traps. That's not cutting it. So like, you still have to play Tenpai as a blind second deck. But you know, if you don't draw the right floodgate hand traps, it's really hard to pinpoint what hand traps you need versus what matchups, right? Because obviously you want to play Droll versus Risio, but then you draw Droll versus Malice, and it's like, well, great, that doesn't do shit. You gotta play Lancia for Malice, and then you draw Lancia versus, you know, fucking Gem Knight or Risio, or, you know, anything that doesn't care about Lancia, which is like still half of the meta at least. Then it's like, oh cool, I guess this hand I guess I'm down 1 hand trap. But it's like, there's Fua, you know, Fua is alright. I guess Fua is decent versus everything, but also it's not game deciding versus a lot of things. A lot of things can make up an okay board versus a Fool Loss, but that's probably your best shot, honestly, to resolving Fool Loss, and hopefully the rest of your deck being able to play through a half board, which, you know, half the time you still can't. So like, there's a lot of problems with blind second decks like Tenpai, and in terms of blind second decks, I think Gem Knight is still a better blind second deck than Tenpai now, because the Gem Knights can actually play through more than 1 Ash Blossom, unlike Tenpai a lot of the time. But yeah, it's just, even the blind second decks, even the best blind second decks, I think, are going to struggle going second all the time. And next, so Mitsurugi card, or Mitsurugi deck. So this is like pure Mitsurugi and Fiendsmith Mitsurugi, which is like, it's just 90% of a pure Mitsurugi deck just with Fiendsmith cards. I think I actually like pure Mitsurugi quite a lot. So I'm putting it quite high, since pure Mitsurugi runs the very good non-engine. Like, it runs like what's it called, Dominus Impulse, you know, which is stuff that not every deck can run. And that's another the reason I'm like, I don't like Fiendsmith Mitsurugi as much as pure Mitsurugi. Even though Fiendsmith Mitsurugi, technically it has more plays under Droll than pure Mitsurugi does, because you can just turn 2 bodies in the Fiendsmith combo. Pure Mitsurugi isn't as bad in the Droll as every other Mitsurugi variant. Like, if you splash Mitsurugi into your deck and you get Droll into Mitsurugi cards, that's bad, because you're not playing that many Mitsurugi cards. So like, 1 Droll often stops your access to the rest of your Mitsurugi, cards. But in pure Mitsurugi, you're playing a lot more Mitsurugi cards. You're playing like 3 Mitsurugi Ritual. You're playing more Ritual monsters themselves. So if you search once and get Drolled, you still have a good chance of actually having like either hard drawing fusion, hard drawing Mitsurugi Ritual, or your first action was pre-prep and you searched a Ritual card already. And if you have a Ritual card plus a Ritual monster after one search, then that kind of plays around Droll, because then you can still Ritual summon through a Droll, which you can't really do with other like Mitsurugi hybrids, because you're not playing as many Mitsurugi cards. That being said, the Droll still hurts. Like, it's still, you know, it's still quite impactful. And the thing with pure Mitsurugi is that also, the thing is like, a lot of pure deck lists, you think one of the advantages is that it gets to play more hand traps, because it doesn't have a secondary engine, it doesn't have another engine taking up space. But with pure Mitsurugi, instead of running a secondary engine, you're running more Mitsurugi cards, so you're not actually gaining that much more space for hand traps compared to another deck. Like, on average, I think like a Mitsurugi Risio deck has room for more hand traps than a pure Mitsurugi deck, which, you know, sounds odd, because like, one deck is 2 archetypes and one deck is just 1 archetype, but the 1 archetype deck runs a lot more of the 1 archetype. And also, you maybe want to play a Wosu, like any number of Wosu for like the Liker Dancers, potentially, even though Lunalight, as I said, hasn't really been that common on the ladder as I've seen recently. But, you know, it's nice to have an out for it, just a free out if you ever do play against it. And yeah, also there's this like bullshit with searching fossil line. I think the fossil line stuff is bad because like if you can do a combo where you did went all the way into fossil dyna without using your normal summon as well, like I mean you're probably in like a very good spot already without the fossil line. Like just search Nibiru, and your opponent is gonna be hard pressed to play through your Habakiri, your Mitsurugi board plus a Nibiru in hand that's gonna trigger all your Mitsurugi effects. So yeah, I'll see it like this. So I mean, Fiends of Mitsurugi is not bad either. I don't know. I do like Mitsurugi Orcus better than Fiends of Mitsurugi, just because it's of the Orcus cards. But yeah, these three right here could be ordered in like either can be argued to be ordered in any which way. So I'll keep it like that. Branded. So branded. This is not a friendly format for branded. It's there's lots of Dominus Impulse flying around. There's a lot of Lancia flying around. Unfortunately, Brandon is a deck that gets somewhat affected by Lancia too. So yeah, the positive is that not as many people are playing cards like Valor or Imperm, which those cards honestly they hurt Brandon about as much as like a Lancia does, because Valoring Alibur or like Imperming Alibur is a good play, but like people just aren't playing those types of hand traps as much anymore. And yeah, but the number of Bystials has also increased because Malice is like the most common deck, and like the best deck, and Malice now it kind of has to run Bystials just for consistency with Allure and just for like extenders and ways to play the game. So like there's also decks that also are playing more Bystials for Mitsurugi cards and for the Orcus cards, because those Bystials are good against those decks. When like before, when it was just Malice and Risio, like a couple months before, Bystials were nowhere to be seen because like they were just simply weren't good against those two decks. Now there's like a bunch of decks that Bystials are impactful against, and not to mention the most common deck does play Bystials. So like Bystials is also not what you want to see with branded. Like going second, it's really hard to break boards again when a deck like Brandon does not play that many hand traps, and when you don't play hand traps and your opponent full combos damn near every time, it's really hard. Like even just drawing a one Super Poly is not going to do anything into a Malice board, because they can literally Super Poly a Malice board, everything comes back because of GWC at March here. Like it's frustrating when you have to play a deck that plays board breakers like Branded, because board breakers are just not as good of an option as hand traps. I'll still put it. It's hard because Brandon also has not seen much success. Like even Plater is not even playing Branded as much anymore. It's yeah. I would say between Gem Knight tier and Branded, I actually think Gem Knight tier is probably the more common deck between the two. So. Yeah. Speaking of what's not competent is Kashtira. Like Jesus Christ, this is man. The Kashtira is like it's not even Kashtira. The Kashtira cards don't do anything. It's literally all the floodgates you put in your deck. Okay, the best Kashtira hand is the Kashtira hand with the least amount of Kashtira monsters and the most amount of like floodgates in it. And it's like, if you're just gonna play a floodgate deck, just play stun, just normal summon Fossil Dyna. Fossil Dyna does more on your end board than the Fender does. Like you never get to a Rise Heart anymore. Like if your opponent has any hand trap, you just don't get to a Rise Heart. There's not the deck is still inconsistent and bricky as hell in terms of the actual Kashtira cards. Like I was like too harsh on Regenesis, because like I actually put Regenesis like lower than Kashtira. That was completely wrong. Regenesis is so much better than Kashtira. It is so much more of a competent deck than Kashtira is. Like Regenesis is like everything Kashtira wants to be. Besides the consistency, there is still a little bit of consistency problems with Regenesis as well. I like saying my way to describe Regenesis is that it is the only deck in the game that can open its own in-archetype searcher or reinforcement of the army, which Regenesis, the spell card is that it searches any Regenesis monster, but you can technically open that and still brick, because every Regenesis monster needs another monster to special summon itself. There's no 1-card combos. Everything's a 2-card combo. It's still, assuming you don't break, it's still more consistent than Kashtira anyways. But Regenesis can actually play good monsters that Kashtira can't. Like actual hand traps. Like one, it can play Bestials, which Kashtira, if you play Bestials with Kashtira or any monster hand trap that summons up on the field, you just block your own Kashtira monster. So that's neat. That's definitely some cool anti-synergy there. There's stuff like what's it called, Chaos Hunter, which is good again now that Malice and Orcus are popular. I mean, it's always been good because Malice has always been popular, which again, Kashtira struggles to do that because you just can't, you just block your own Kashtira monsters with that. And the deck has more grind game. It's a deck where if you open only Regenesis monsters, your Regenesis monsters can still put up more defense than like opening just Fender or Pass or like stuff like that. Like it's not as weak in the hand traps because Kashtira can get stopped by hand traps, and then you just end on like one Kashtira monster. Whereas Regenesis, it's hard to hand trap because the monsters special themselves from hand, and then they're stuff like that. But Regenesis is just the better version of Kashtira in my opinion. So like, that's why I wouldn't. Seriously, I don't even think you can play Kashtira in Genesis. That's funny enough because they cost too much. But like the less Kashtira is playable for most people, I guess the better it is. So and also next we have Gimmick Puppet. So Gimmick Puppet, I feel like this is the worst that Gimmick Puppet has ever been. Okay, because the hand traps people are running now, Gimmick Puppet beat the fair hand traps. Like stuff like Valor, stuff like Imperm, the field spell makes it so Gimmick Puppet does not care about stuff like that. Okay, unfortunately the hand traps that people play now, Gimmick Puppet doesn't really have great protection versus. Like Droll. Yeah, like if you get Droll at any point, it's just a massive deal. Like there's no Gimmick Puppet card that protects from Droll. Dominus Impulse is also really annoying because Dominus Impulse is a trap card, so the field spell doesn't protect you from that. There's a Lancia is hilarious because Lancia basically prevents you from banishing all your toxic Gimmick Puppet monsters from the graveyard. So no Terror Baby, no Biscual, none of that stuff. So you can't actually apply protection on your Gimmick Puppet monsters if you get Lancia'd. So then you actually don't have any protection. So you're just a sitting duck to the real disruption, especially if you're going second. And and then obviously Gimmick Puppet is a deck that prefers to run board breakers over a high amount of hand traps because of thrusting for like Condolence Puppet. Condolence Puppet is a good card, but obviously now in this format it's not advised to cut down on hand traps and run board breakers. So like I also have not seen Gimmick Puppet at all this month. It's I'm like willing to put it down here. This deck has fallen off. It has not impressed me. The last few times, like even when I played against this deck in Duelist Cup, like when I was playing Malice, I bricked with Malice and I was still able to win just because the hand traps that we played now, Gimmick Puppet struggles versus and has no protection against, as I mentioned. So yeah, also Bestials too. That there's no protection against Bestials either. So yeah, we'll put it here. So Lab has seen some modest success, but pretty much all of that has been going first. Don't ask me how Lab wins going second. I can't give you that answer. But technically, Lab is like a Dominus Impulse deck, so there's one thing going for it. But Lab just runs some of the most like insane trap cards like you'll ever see. Like Banquet of Millions has been a staple in Lab basically ever since Malice came into the game, which is like hilarious because you can't run D-Barrier because D-Barrier doesn't do shit versus Malice. So like you're running Banquet of Millions to literally banish your opponent's entire extra deck to skip their turn that way. That's a guaranteed way to work against every deck in the game. Because like previously, like if you were to run D-Barrier, as mentioned, doesn't do shit against Malice. If you were to run different Dimension Ground, does not do enough to Malice. I'm noticing a pattern here. If you were to play simultaneous equation cannon, it banishes cards, so again Malice can resist that. Yeah, basically Malice is the reason why Labyrinth has been running shit like Simo Archfiends and Banquet of Millions now. And it's not in the game yet, but in the upcoming pack we're gonna get Trapaholic, which is another way to set Toxic Floodgate traps from the deck. So yeah, again, go first, win the coin flip. It's going to be really hard for your opponent to interact with your trap cards if they're not playing a blind second deck, which that is like maybe one of the weaknesses of Lab is that if you play against the blind second deck that actually plays board breakers like one of these, or like a blind second side striker deck, for example, that could be a bit of a problematic. But like the conventional decks that don't play backward removal are just gonna get they're gonna get floodgated out of the game. But yeah, I still can't put Lab that much higher because like the main problem is like how the fuck are you gonna win going second with Lab? Like I never lost versus Lab when I went first versus it. I also never even knew if I was playing Lab because most of the time they would just leave before you finished your combo because they didn't open any hand traps because they don't fucking play any. So like put it here. Above the Risio decks because like there's really no reason to play these Risio variants as I mentioned before. So at least above that. Voiceless Voice. So Voiceless Voice is like this deck used to be a lot better. When it was just Malice and Risio, Voiceless Voice had the niche of playing Saravis that can't be targeted, and if you stick a Saravis at all, like you just automatically win the game versus Risio and Malice. Yeah, those aren't the only decks in the game now. Obviously, like you struggle going second. Like I mean, what deck doesn't? Let's be honest here. But now that the Mitsurugi cards are in the game, that's like a massive problem for Voiceless Voice because the Mitsurugi cards bypass Saravis. They are summoned. They are ritual summons that start a chain. They are not inherent summons. So like because they bypass Saravis, like that's like the biggest boon in the matchups where it's good against. Not to mention Murakumo just straight up destroys that shit when on summon. So like it's actually really your setup is actually very fragile into Mitsurugi cards. Like you got to be careful with what you negate off the Skull Guardian because like one ritual resolving and then like suddenly the game's over. Also like Sky Striker, funnily enough, plays like removal for your untargetable, like for your barriers that make your monsters untargetable, and runs board breaker sometimes. So like there's just a lot more decks that can. It just don't auto die to Saravis, and when you don't auto die to Saravis, it's like the deck does not feel nearly as good. Even though you're still good against Risio decks, you're still good against the Malice decks. You're pretty good against Automat Risio, funny enough, but you're not as good against Mitsurugi Risio because of the Mitsurugi cards. So, well, I'll put it here for now. It's probably going to be like the lowest deck in this tier 3, besides the Risio variants. And next we have Mermail. So Mermail, Solido. This deck does not see very much play anymore. Obviously, like going second, this is a deck that can play going second, with the Sidra, but ultimately it still does not have enough non-engine to be comfortable. Going first now, it lost a Call by Grave, but it also opponents lost a Droll versus you, and like they play Lancia now, which Lancia, you actually kind of Mermail doesn't really care about Lancia too much. Like if you are prepared for Lancia, you can easily like never get hurt by Lancia with Mermail, and like if you go first, it's still it's still as strong of a deck as ever as any other deck going first. And if you play against a blind second deck, like one of these, that's another benefit. Although, as I mentioned before, blind second decks have just not been as popular because even the Sky Striker decks have been not blinding second as much, which that's also fine because Mermail can easily play through a Sky Striker board, so the Sky Striker matchup is not that bad. But other matchups going second, it's not ideal. I guess you also resist Bestials. Dom's Impulse is annoying, and you can't really run Dom's Impulse yourself because you would rather play second slide, just for extra pushes. But uh, Mermail's. I think Mermail is in like a decent spot. I low key want to put her above Lunalight, but there's no proof of concept with Mermail because the only person that would ever play Mermail right now, I feel like in this format, is Judeyu, and Judeyu has not even been playing or testing Mermail, so like I don't really know where to put it. I don't think it's fallen off too hard. It's just that it's just simply been not as good as the newest decks. Like why play Mermail as a going first combo deck that struggles going second when you can play a better version of that in like any Orcus variant. Um, yeah, so Yubel was at full power from like the recent ban list, like all the was that 2 bans ago or was that this bans? I don't even quite remember because I'm gonna be honest, I haven't played against Yubel since it's gotten all its dark backing beats and all its opening the spirit gates back to 3. What that did do is that it makes Yubel sort of like Mermail in a way where it's just a super like crazy going first deck. That's we know Yubel plays bricks. Yubel kind of sucks going second most of the time, but going first, if again you don't open like a Maxi or a Mulcharmy versus Yubel, I mean, good luck. Like Lancia is not going to stop it. Dominus Impulse. This deck can play through single 1-for-1 hand traps like Dominus Impulse even. Nib does not do a goddamn thing. It's pretty much like it feels like Mulcharmy or Bust. Like this deck also doesn't. It can play through Bestials too. If you don't open Bestials plus any more hand traps alongside them, Yubel still plays through those hand traps. So it's like it adds to like a shitty duel experience where it's yet another deck that's fucking impossible. That feels impossible to interact with going first a lot of times, but also just doesn't win when it goes seconds. And yeah, so the unfortunate part is that Yubel is not very popular at all. Like I have rarely seen Yubel, so yeah. Also, the Yubel has like this one thing benefit, whereas it can self troll itself. So if it does get Mulcharmy or Fool Loss, which is that depending on who you ask, that might be a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, so it can do that. So it can also play through Droll a bit better than decks like Risio and like Mitsurugi. So yeah, go first, probably win the game. Go second, probably lose the game. Next we have like the Fire decks, Fire King and Snake Eyes, which this could be Snake Eyes Fire Kings, this could be pure Fire Kings. So the thing with the Fire Kings, let's start with Fire Kings, is that Fire King cards are actually pretty good in the Mitsurugi cards. Because the Mitsurugi cards, most of the time, especially when they're being splashed in other decks, they're just used to set up a Murakumo on your turn to pop your monsters. Which, you're playing Fire King, like who really cares about that, right? This is like the single best deck into the Mitsurugi engine. And like, so yeah, the thing is that against Risio, you would think it would be similar versus Risio, but Risio can hit your spell and trap cards. So like it can hit Sanctuary and Fire King Island with Detonator. That is a bit of a problem. So it's still not great into Risio, but into the Mitsurugi engine itself, Fire King is actually good. It's actually something it's gotten better. That's actually helped Fire King with the presence of Mitsurugi. Now, it's still the unfortunate part is that Malice is still a top deck, and Fire King is absolutely god awful into Malice. Like that is so hard. Like you sometimes you can't even just beat Blightbinder by itself. Like just not even really any other banishes. Even though banish is also annoying because then you can never resolve fucking Fire King Island. But also just Blightbinder like ripping apart your graveyard is annoying as hell. It's yeah. The deck has some good matchups, some mad matchups. It can win going second, has an okay amount of room for hand traps. It doesn't care about Lancia or Bestials, so like but it does care about Droll. Droll is like the one thing that's, man, it's so hard to play through Droll. Like if you get drolled on any search before you activate Fire King Island, which is going to be most of the time, because you're going to want to search Fire King Island or Sanctuary, then you don't have access to Garunix. And if you don't have access to Garunix, then the deck is kind of boneless. But, yeah, well, I'll put the Fire King parts here, and then Snake Eye. Snake Eye is Snake Eye is like a similar thing, but I haven't seen any really real Snake Eyes builds. Like there have been like Snake Eyes, Mitsurugi, Fiendsmith builds, which is like really how important is the Snake Eyes part of that deck when you're playing like 4 other engines alongside it. And yeah, the Lancia being good, at least, you know, decks that play Zombie Vampire, like Fire King, for example, you have more ways to access your Lancia, because you can just hit it off Zombie Vampire, or you can also revive, quote unquote, revive Lancia with Flambird, setting it to your spell and trap zone, and then summoning it on your opponent's turn, and then lancing them there. So like you have more access. That's one thing about these like Snake Eyes and these like Fire King decks, that they have more access to like Lancia than most other decks do. So like going first, you're more okay into Malice. Going second is still like it's still rough, but yeah. Centurion, I argued whether to even put Centurion here, because it's not like I didn't play against Centurion. I always play against Centurion like a couple times every month for some reason. Don't know if it's the same guy, same person every time, because like this tech is really not popular, and it's not good. Like Centurion's just bad. I don't know why I put it here. It can't even play Impulse because it's light and dark. It gets hit hard by every hand trap besides Lancia itself. Even Lancia, if you're playing Bystials, which some do, because Bystials have gotten better, but obviously if you're playing Bystials, and Lancia kind of screws you over on the Bystials part. Just like Magistus cards, if you're playing the Magistus engine, then it plays into Droll. Like, no matter which sub-engine you pick, you play into like some kind of random hand trap that's being played right now. I guess like the main benefit of like Centurion is that it doesn't care about Fool Loss. Like that's the one hand trap it doesn't care about. But like, I mean, it's not like it did too much even when it didn't get Fool Lost anyways. Like it's full combo, but yeah, I don't know. There's not much to say other than Centurion is like the definition of mid. That's yeah. Then we have Crystron. So Crystron, unfortunately, we're in another Lancian format. Because we're in the Lancian format, the liability of Crystron gets hit quite a bit, just because it's that's Lancia versus Crystron. Clankers. The Clankers, will never, as long as Malice is in the game, the Clankers will never rise because of the existence of Lancia. Maybe wait for K9 cards, and obviously for Malice to fall off a little bit before considering a Crystron. Although they also banned Mjolnir, so like that was like kind of the best thing K9 Crystron could do already. So maybe in the context of that format, it might not even be. Basically, I'm talking about like Crystron several months in the future, because like I don't feel comfortable playing Crystron right now, just because of all the Lancias flying around still, which are still very common. And yeah, Blue Eyes. So that might be a hot take. I actually really like Blue Eyes as a deck. Like low key, I'm putting it like up here, like Blue Eyes. It's like Blue Eyes is a deck where it's like the one deck where it doesn't care about all the hand traps that people are playing against you. Like Droll, who cares? Blue Eyes does not really care about Droll. Droll has the same impact as Imperm. It's like stopping one search, like what they do, right? Fua, who cares about Fua? Lancia, who cares? Bystials, okay, Bystials are a little annoying, but only in multiples. If there's only a single Bystial, you actually don't care about the single Bystial, because banish one Blue Eyes, banish one Maiden, sure. You got another Maiden, you have Roar to hurt the Blue Eyes. Like the one Bystial has never hurt Blue Eyes, and the people are not running like enough Bystials to see multiple Bystials. and like this is one of the better decks in the Maxi. Is there any other hand trap people are running? Like Dominus Impulse. Dominus Impulse is super low impact versus Blue Eyes. Like it's really not big of a deal at all. Like it's just a deck that has that every high impact hand trap people play against other decks is low impact versus Blue Eyes, and Blue Eyes itself can run probably out of all of these decks, Blue Eyes can probably maybe run the most hand traps out of anyone, except maybe like Tenpai. But like Tenpai has, again, the issue of Tenpai is it can't go first, whereas Blue Eyes is very good going first because of the aforementioned resilience to all the hand traps. Also, it's gone way better this format, specifically because of the other decks. But like again, a couple months prior, when it was just Malice and Risio, Spirit Dragon was low-key kind of ass, because Spirit Dragon didn't stop anything relevant versus Malice or Risio. Like against Malice, you can stop a Link Decoder, whoop-de-doo. Against Risio, the only purpose of Spirit Dragon was so that Spirit Dragon would eat the aggregator that X sends, so that you can then tag into Ultimate Spirit Dragon without getting it negated by X, an aggregator. But now you see decks like Orcus, you see decks like Mitsurugi, especially. Spirit Dragon is good against those decks. Spirit Dragon versus Heart Pourer versus any Orcus monster in the graveyard, excellent. Spirit Dragon versus Mitsurugi, Saji, or any attributed monster, it does something. So like that's a benefit right there. Drill Beam is also like pretty it's still a pretty decent card. And yeah, this deck, a lot of decks felt like the Called By the one hit helped affected them going first. Blue Eyes not so much, because you didn't care about the hand to begin with. So yeah, the only I would say maybe the only downside with Blue Eyes is that it can't run Dominus Impulse, like, so it has to look elsewhere for hand traps. But it has plenty of options, and like I have always been a believer in Blue Eyes. So like this is yeah, I don't think it's as good as any of the decks above it. Like I don't think it's close to tier 1 or anything. I think it's like a solid, like it's like Blue Eyes is like the top tier is like a bunch of Malice, like Gem Knights and like Risio and the Orcus and like Mitsurugi variants, and then Blue Eyes is like what I consider the best of the rest. So yeah, Momento has fallen off a lot, mainly because I think there's just better combo decks than Momento. Like all of these decks up here, they put up a similar amount of interruptions to Momento, which is like a lot, enough to win the game, but they can do it off one card combos while playing tons of hand traps, having room for non-engine. And Risio and Malice can often draw cards during a combo with like Augusto Emerald, or like Malice just draws like multiple different ways. And yeah, Momento, it was okay versus Risio, maybe a little bit, but Risio's end board has gotten better. Also, Risio with Automat, if you go second versus Risio with Momento and you don't play a lot of hand traps, which Momento usually doesn't, you just get goddamn turn skipped. And Mjolnir got banned, and so like that was one of the things that Momento could do, was like Mjolnir lock if you really wanted to. Not anymore. This is a deck that again favors a lot of that favors playing board breakers, because it doesn't have as much space as other decks to run that many hand traps. But as we mentioned, board breakers, there's an issue with playing board breakers over hand trap this format. Yeah, and I haven't seen Memento in months either, so fortunately we're gonna have to put Memento a bit lower than other decks. But yeah, so this is about what I think the format looks like right now, a couple weeks into it. Again, it will probably change by the time the Duelist Cup comes next month, even if we don't get a pack, because we only know the filler pack that we're getting at the end of November. We don't know what's in the December pack yet. So like in the December pack, I'll make sure I'll do like an even more detailed outlook of the meta right before, or like right during the Duelist Cup, so that you can have we'll have the most up-to-date information. But this is what I'm working with right now. So again, let me know if you disagree with any of this. Let me know if there's like some decks that I left out that feel especially egregious that should deserve a mention. Leave all of that in the comments. Roast me in the comments. That's what the comments are for. But yeah, thank you for watching.